You're listening to Wonderful Life with Tom Rohr. From Rogers to Bedford Falls, from Fayetteville to Pottersville, we're discovering how one person's life can have an effect on so many others. My guest today is Jason Robinson. Welcome, Jason.
Hi, Tom.
Jason has founded a new business on the idea that small and medium businesses desire and deserve reliable, professional, and trustworthy technology solutions. Well, so Jason, so our audience can get to know you a little bit better, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
I was born and raised in Northwest Arkansas. Been here pretty much my whole life. Born in 1979, raised in Elm Springs. I got two brothers. I'm the middle of three boys. My mom and dad married young and have been around here most of their lives. My mother passed in 2000. I had gone, I was about 21, I believe, when she passed. She was 41. She passed young. At that time, I was working remote, the only time I lived away from Northwest Arkansas, for about a year and a half, doing telecommunications work. Tyson's been a big part of our family for a long time. When I was born, my mom was working at Tyson right around that time, and I kind of grew up around corporate and got to know all of her team members there, and it was all just one big family. My dad worked HVAC and construction, has been involved in construction in this area for north of 40 years, I would say.
So what is HVAC?
Heating, ventilating, and air conditioning.
Okay.
So the guy that keeps the room cool when it's 100 plus outside.
Hey, he's a popular guy this time of year, isn't he?
Yeah, so he focused mostly commercial, but he's now at Crystal Bridges. He's runs the facilities for Crystal Bridges up there. Okay. Can tell you anything you need to know about that facility. It's pretty neat. Pretty simple, upbringing. Never had a ton, but never wanted for nothing kind of a thing either.
You said three brothers? You're one of
two brothers. Me, there's three boys.
Okay.
So me
and where do you fall in that?
Middle. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm right in between. So, and we're about 2-3 years apart between each gap. So older brother works for Cox Telecommunications. My younger brother runs his own business doing cabinet work. He's been doing woodwork for, 14, 15 years now, something like that. Yeah, my grandfather, I was born on my grandfather's birthday. He never got past the 8th grade, but he was one of the smartest guys I ever knew. And when I was 15 is when he passed. So cancer's got a history in our family, so I've dealt with it quite a bit in my life. Like I say, in Elm Springs, when we grew up there, smaller town, and, everybody took care of everybody else's kids kind of a thing. We'd run around in summertime and just everybody have their back doors open just about, and you run to your friend's house and their mom feeds you kind of a thing. And we did a lot of that growing up, playing around. And my aunt had a farm just west, on the west edge of Elm Springs, just outside of city limits. And that's where we spent a lot of time too. She had a family farm there with 100 and something acres, still does. The family does. She passed this year with ALS. Did a lot of playing in the creeks down there, riding 4-wheelers and a lot of outdoor stuff. It was really fun.
So you've really seen a lot of change to the area.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Like my grandpa moved here. I believe my dad told me he moved here whenever 412 was dirt. So we've been in this area a long time. So, yeah, I've seen a ton of change. The Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville corridor, you used to could drive it and not have to have city limit signs. We used to just be able to see pasture between it. And
sure.
Nowadays it's very much grown together. Mm-hmm. And population wise, we've just exploded. I graduated Springdale in 97. Graduating class, I think about 5'11", 5'20" in that neighborhood. Okay. Pretty big class even for back then, but then they split to Harbor and now everybody around here is doing the two high school thing. As I, went through school, elementary school in Springdale, stayed through the Springdale School District, so the Central Junior High and then Springdale High School. On-the-job training program is what it was. I worked an OJT program through marketing management class in high school, and I was able to work for my dad at the sheet metal shop he worked in.
So tell us a little bit about that program.
Yeah, so that program, Miss Whitaker, she basically taught business class, and it was the class was titled Marketing Management, but it was about business, how do you run a business, things like that, right? And looking back now where I'm at, it's like probably should have paid more attention. But yeah, what it allowed you to do was to get credit for work. So you could get a job, and back then, all the kids wanted to drive as soon as they could. Nowadays, things are a little different, but I wanted to get my own wheels and get a job, make my own money. so when I was 14, 15 in high school, I got a hardship license, and I was able to drive to and from work and to and from school. And I started working for my dad at the sheet metal shop. I was too young to be in the shop, even with a waiver. So I started mowing the owner's yard. And I would, that first summer, I began taking care of his property, mowing, weed eating, doing all that kind of stuff, helping him out. And at the end of summer, when I got started in school, my dad was able to sign the proper waiver paperwork. I turned 15, and I was able to get to working in the shop at the age of 15. So a bunch of heavy equipment and things, a lot of liability, totally get it. But I was able to start working in the sheet metal shop with all the other guys doing metal fabrication for, the HVAC stuff like we were talking about earlier. But in the commercial world, it's a lot bigger. The equipment is, and the end product is, to carry larger volumes of air across large warehouses and things like that. If you drive any building you see that's got the big returns and all the stuff on top, all that equipment, that duct work is, a lot of what we were fabricating and building. And mostly it was focused in just that shop was mostly duct work. During my time there, I was there all through high school, and they actually gave me a set of keys to the building, and I had the alarm code and stuff, and I would go up after work, and I would work, and I had certain pieces of equipment I could operate, certain I couldn't, with nobody else there under supervision as a kid. But I learned a lot, and my dad, brought us up with a good work ethic. He had 3 boys for a reason. Everything was split into 3 tasks. It was divide and conquer, and we all had a purpose, and you worked together as a team, and many hands make light work, and all that kind of stuff. He had 3 brothers, my old man did, so there was 4 boys, when he was growing up. So very much the same kind of upbringing.
So he knew what that looked like.
He repeated a pattern for sure. But it's good. So yeah, working in the shop, I learned what hard work was for sure. Hot, sweaty summers in the sheet metal shop. And then there was some welding fabrication also done in there. But along the time I was there was, that was probably late 90s. Technology starts to really come about more in everywhere, really. But in a manufacturing facility or environment like that, you start seeing CNC machines. The CNC machines. All
right, so CNC machine.
I'd have to look it up exactly. It's like I've got a ton of acronyms in my head.
Okay. So what's it do?
It's a computer-controlled piece of equipment, right? Okay. So think kind of robotics almost, but maybe not that advanced, right? Not robotics today versus, what people think of when you say robotics, but really it's, I think it may be computer numerically controlled or whatever, something like that. But it's pretty much just, you can think of it like an XYZ. So you're going to have, 3 planes or 2 planes. It's either an X and a Y, or it's an X and a Y and a Z. The first piece of equipment that we got that was CNC was a press brake. And they brought in this thing, and the owner of the shop was very proud of it, spent a lot of money on it. And it was, obviously the purpose of technology is to make you more efficient and effective. And it was a press brake. And before, when you'd have 2 workers at a brake, and you'd have to change your dies out, and you'd have to measure all your brakes, so the brake would be like bending the metal. So if you've got big sheets of metal, you lay them in a brake, and it's got jaws basically, and a top and bottom jaw, and it comes down and squeezes the metal and bends it at a certain angle and all that. So you've got it's very manual, and you have a gauge, and you can measure your angle and pitch and all that. The CNC machine came in and had a computer hanging off the side of it, and you just plugged it in, and it had the back plane where you would come in and touch the guide with the metal for how deep or how far you wanted to have that line bent at. It was automatic too. It would slide in and out. So if your first brake was 3 inches in, your next brake was, however many, it would move based on steps, and you could just program the steps in it. Oh man, that was it. Like I got that figured out quick. And you got all these old hands around the sheet metal shop, and this young punk up there just banging away at this new device and just making it sing. And so that was when I really started to understand, man, technology's like, that's cool. And then we had about the same time at home, I was playing with our first PC, 95, I think back in the day was our first big PC. I had an old Apple IIe way back in the day that my uncle got us, and used to play Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. Yeah. Playing on the CNC machine or at the shop. And then we had a plasma cutter as well, and it would be, you'd lay a piece of sheet metal down, and it would have basically a cutting torch on an XY, and it would come and cut shapes out, and you take the shapes and you do whatever with, right? Depending on what you want to make out of it. At that time, the owner ventured into a new business with more precise CNC equipment, and it was it's actually still there today. He sold it off, but it's TLS, Technical Laser Services. So it's right over there on Kelly Road in Rogers. But when they bought their first machine, it was the third one, I believe, in the country, and it was like a 3,000 watt laser, and it would cut to 1,000th of an inch tolerance, and you'd pull your material off, and you wouldn't even have to sand it or do anything to it. It was an amazing piece of equipment. I got to work on that a little bit through high school and kind of furthered that whole technology meets mechanical. Man, that's where I love and live. I mean, I love today even, the IoT type, the Internet of Things and gadgets and widgets that do things. I mean, I play around with 3D printer stuff, and I still very much like the CNC aspect, because the part that I broke away from more in my career as I pursued the technology, it becomes all a virtual world, and the tangible piece of what you produce is non-existent, basically, right? Cool, I can go spin up a bunch of virtual machines and accomplish a lot of really neat tasks and build efficiencies into systems, but at the end of the day, what am I making that's a physical something? There's not a whole lot there, especially now with the push to cloud where you can't even touch your own hardware. Right. All it is just somebody else's computers out somewhere around the world, really. So yeah, I mean, out of graduate high school in 97, finished up the work in the sheet metal shop, moved on from there, went to the U of A for about a year, and then just got to where I really wanted to be working and applying and learning knowledge as I go, rather than I went there and it was like English lit and some other courses and classes, and I was just really wanting to get elbow deep in, in work, right, and do things. That's
probably not that unusual for somebody in your field either.
Yeah, and technology does move fast, right? And I think I had one tech class my first year there, and it was cool, but I had all these other things, and it's like, man, so big proponent of vocational education. I love, my dad actually taught at NTI back in the day. He taught HVAC classes. So after that, odd job a little bit here and there, and then an opportunity opened up for me to go on the road and work for Nortel. And I was young and single, so why not, right? So I traveled with a team that became buddies, and we covered Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. What we did there was that was right around the time of the high-speed internet boom. So think about 99, 2000, when DSL really started taking off, and you didn't have your old dial-up modems anymore. It was high speed, so that was, I think, a megabit or something back then, maybe not even that. So we were actually doing co-located installations in telcos across the 3 states. We would go in, bring in you'd have a service provider who would rent the lines from what you call Ma Bell, like AT&T, whoever up there. It was US West and Quest were the two in the area. And we would go install the equipment, terminate it on the provider side, drop it in a cage, have it tagged and labeled, leave. They would bring in their equipment, hook it up, resell internet straight out of the back of the phone company, that way, kind of a deal. And it was pretty cool, more kind of tech stuff, right? I've kind of always been attached to that in some form or fashion, running wire and doing whatever. But it was neat because I was on my own, and I got to go and, hang out in apartments and run around, the 3 states. And I saw Mount Rushmore how many times, because I was always over there, it seemed like. And then that was my mom's second round of cancer came back when I was there, and that was the one she lost. So she was diagnosed in 1998, I believe. And then she passed in 2000, was the second round, because she was in remission for a couple of years. And that was when I moved back and just kind of, you suck in with the family and stay tight. Did that for a little while. And then in 2004 was when I landed back at Tyson. I was at Tyson briefly from 97 to 99. Like I say, that whole period of kind of young and not really career minded, just job focused more than anything. And I didn't really probably see the opportunity I would have had back then from 97 to 99, but the Lord really only knows kind of where that would have went if I'd have stuck around, right? But I had actually back then, for my short term at Tyson, worked in the data center doing kind of tape management stuff and general operational duties. Our family had been focused around Tyson for quite a long time because my mom's career was there. So it was very much like family. And when I left and went to Nortel, I was a subcontract for Nortel, but when I was on the road, I still very much kept in touch with all those guys and gals there. And that's what circled me back in 2004 when I came back, was them kind of saying, hey, you're back. You want to maybe have another opportunity here at Tyson again?
Okay.
I was not really keen on the opportunity they presented, honestly, up front, because it was night shift weekends, man, and it was rough. The shift was 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and I'm 21 years old, 22 years old, or whatever.
That's tough on your social
life.
life.
I was tough on my social life. I was right there in that. I guess I was probably 22, 23 at that time, somewhere around in there. But I'm getting to that age where
I'm going to do it. That probably would be the time in your life.
Yeah, it's like, you either do it or you don't. I mean, it's like, okay, you don't have a college degree. You just got to start. And granted, you suck it up and make it happen. You're making sacrifices, right? So you can go plow through college, make the sacrifices, and come away with a degree. And I took it. The thing was, when I took my sacrifices and I sacrificed my social life for a year or so, it's still a sacrifice, but I think, I didn't have the debt out of it, so that was kind of a good deal, I guess. Mm-hmm. In 2004, I went back into it with a mindset of, this isn't a job, this is going to be a career. I was at that time in my life, early 20s, call it, where it's like, okay, I got to get something straight and get going. I'm not going to pursue a degrry. I'm going to make something happen, right? So I started out in ops, and Tyson was fantastic to me for many, many years. I took every advantage I could to learn and grow around with all those around me. I was surrounded by people who had been at the company for a long time, and I had regular interactions with highly skilled professionals in the fields that they were in, and I took every nugget I could. Not the greatest thing whenever you're calling people 2 a.m. waking up with problems with the technology stuff, because the ops overnight thing is how you watch this dashboard when things break. You call out. It's that level of you're just a level 1 guy. You don't have the skills to fix it. You're the second alert, because already there's been an alert, and obviously they're sleeping. So your job's to wake them up, basically. And we did a lot of that. We did some general help desk support, which is where I really kind of started making the human connection with things. And, I was very shy growing up, and I started building relationships with people. And I had, customers that would call us and they would ask for me, and then they wouldn't talk to anybody but me, which was kind of cool after a while, because I kind of went a little extra to help them maybe, whereas some of the other folks maybe just would log a ticket and say, yeah, the team will get with you tomorrow and get you fixed up. It's at night. You got all the time in the world. Go figure out how to fix it. And that's when I started learning a lot of my Google foo that I got right now, learning how to do research on my own and teaching, because the thing is, I go back to as a kid, I remember very vividly standing on the front porch in Elm Springs and having a guy come up and sell my dad a case of books, and it was the Encyclopedia Britannica. And my dad, we didn't have a lot of money. My dad spent $1,500 on his books. And my dad was always a knowledge guy. Like, he always was seeking knowledge. And that stuck with me, because I realized that back then, I really understood how much money that was to my dad. That was a ton of money. And today, there's that information times I don't even know how many factors available for free on the internet. Right. And, that's what I really try to drive home to my daughter. Now she's 13 and my son's 5, so he don't even understand none of that yet. But it's really it's out there, use the internet for good kind of a thing. There's so much good out there to be had. There's a lot of bad, but still the knowledge piece of it is, if you want to know something, you can almost go find an answer. Yeah. You're most likely not the first person to think of whatever it is or have the first problem that you have. So really that's when, at night, at the help desk at Tyson, I really learned a ton just by doing self-leadership and learning and just development and going and taking. And Tyson had an internal courseware that you could go take to a little bit of. So I took my first Unix class overnight there, and I took it very seriously. I took it just like it was a college course almost. It took me 8 months to get through it, because I literally verbatim wrote down everything. And I saw a stat a couple weeks ago. It makes sense. If you write something down, it's like reading it 3 times or 7 times or something like that. So I did. I wrote that entire Unix course, and then I asked, because we were literally in the basement of Tower 1. I had interaction regularly with the day shift, like the IT, the guys, the guys and gals that took care of the company's IT. I had regular interaction because I was calling them at 2 a.m, waking them up. So I took some opportunities to say, hey, I'm learning some things. Would you give me a little access for something, or can I do this or that? We worked in operations, and operations in general had a fairly decent set of responsibilities, and come to find out, we actually had some access to do some things, but it was just kind of a unknown, and a lot of people were just kind of okay doing with what they were doing, but I really wanted more, right? So I really started asking around, poking, and then I wrote my first script and started doing some automation. And it was like, we had a report. It's like, how many tapes do we do on a weekly basis to take offside and stuff like that. So I started learning, some scripting pieces and really seeing how that can literally translate into less work hours kind of a thing. Because instead of manually gathering reports, you go out there and you can custom dev something, as rudimentary as it would be, and you could shave 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes an hour, whatever. I worked on the desk for about a year, changing shifts, and ended up getting a day shift supervisor role and an opportunity for a decent sized project. I had kind of built a little bit of a brand as, a young gun that's really hungry, wanting to learn a lot of things. And I had an opportunity to work on batch scheduling for Tyson. And it was a cool project. It gave me a ton of exposure. I got to go meet all kinds of people that were in the applications side of Tyson. That really kind of helped me understand the business, what drove the business, the applications that are the underlying functions for those business units that go run, and then taking it a step deeper would be the infrastructure part, which is really where I have my home base has been forever there. It was forever there, and that project was really kind of cool because it was a good launching off point. It got me a lot of visibility, and I kind of was hunted out, not totally, but it was kind of one of those things where there was an opportunity that came up and it worked out. Looking back, the Lord was at work the whole time I was in my career, because to have everything that's happened in my career, just being a kid that graduated high school and just went to work and started taking off. Not really having a ton of direction, but just really having the drive. He had a hand in everything that happened. And it was amazing because learning what I learned throughout my career, you couldn't go pay for an education like that. You can't, and not with what I've been blessed to see and be a part of, and the teams I've worked on, the places I've been, the opportunities I've had. There's no way.
It sounds like you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, for sure.
But the first story you told, I think, really describes how times changed when technology came in. But really, your story at Tyson's very similar to that, in that you're constantly in search of making things better and using technology to make things better. Yeah.
So one of the coolest things, there's a few projects I've had, a hand in, but there's some that kind of bookmark and stand out. And as a operator in the basement, it's really kind of one of those I guess you don't really carry a lot of, maybe respect, probably too strong of a word, but really people that are kind of in ops really don't get that much attention.
They're behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. And it was one of those things where we had an issue where we had a weekly process that ran, and it was quite a lengthy process, and it was print. It was a print job. And the problem I had with it, I had became the supervisor, and I had, at that point, I had employees that worked with me. I like to say with and not for, because we're a team. But anyway, these ladies would spend every Thursday, there was two of them, and they would spend every Thursday, they'd spend hours manually sorting papers. And I'm like, come on, man, this is what technology's for. So the issue was when the reports were generated and sent to us, they were already PDFs. And the files were randomly named, and I had called the team that managed the distribution of the electronic distribution of the reports to our printer, and said, "Hey, programmer guys, can you fix this? Because I got two ladies that every week are spending easily 6 man hours every week manually sorting these reports." And they said, "Oh, there's nothing we can do about it." So I just, I had full access to it once it hit the printer, so I started poking around, and I asked my boss, "Hey, is it cool if I go poke at this?" He's like, "Sure." So I figured out how to strip the header out of the PDF file and respool all the jobs back to the printer, and scripted a rename loop basically through it, and was able to basically start out by receiving a big batch of hundreds of reports that are randomly named. And I was able to run a process once they were all there that would re-spool them and remove them from the queue, and then re-queue them, and they would have proper names by the person it should be delivered to, and then by report ID. And then you could literally, when that process was complete, it took about 15 minutes. So you waited for all the stuff to come in, and when it was done, you ran my job, And then that script ran 15 minutes later. Everything was named proper, and you could literally, like in Excel, click a column header, the whole thing gets sorted, you print it, and the jobs come out in sequence, and the ladies save their time. So that really was that was a big pin in my hat for recognition. I had my director of the department he gave me a call. He's like, hey, how'd you figure that stuff out? And I kind of walked through I just started turning rocks over, go figure something out. It's how I do everything even still today. That was one of the ones that, early in my career, I started understanding that was a confidence builder. I can do this. I can go figure these things out. And that was the first of many of those types of stories in my career where, and it's not just hey, I did that. It sounds like I say I a lot, but it's a whole team effort. The fact that I was able to do that was due to people that had helped and shared and taught skills and those kinds of things along the way. And I try to do that too, even today, would be with anybody I have interaction or work with, the opportunity to educate them as I go. It's not just here, I'm going to solve your problem. It's okay, I'll fix it, but I'm going to show you kind of how this works so that, it's teach a man to fish kind of a thing, right? So.
Okay. Well, now along the way, you mentioned a daughter and a son. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that part of your life?
Yeah, so like I say, shy. So never really did date much growing up, but I had a buddy that I met. I used to shoot pool back in, my days of running around Fayetteville, and I met a buddy of mine down there playing pool, and he introduced me to a lady that was working at his office, young woman at his office, and that was became my wife Cassie, and we got married in June of 2011. We just celebrated our 7th year, and then we had with that marriage, I got a stepdaughter, Brooklyn, who she's mine. She's a daughter, but and then we had our own child, my son Lennox, not the operating system, Lennox, which is the HVAC unit, which still isn't, it's kind of like that. I get that question too sometimes, but it's like, nah, he's just Linux. But he just turned 5, so he'll start kindergarten in the fall.
Okay.
And yeah, my younger brother's got a wife and 3 step boys, and my older brother has got a wife and 2 daughters. Yeah. So.
And you all live in Northwest Arkansas?
Yeah, we're all from here. So we've been here pretty much our whole life, and family reunions have been pretty close. We hadn't done a family reunion in a long time, but the family reunions we used to have were actually pretty decent size just for people not even having to travel. It was just all real close to around here.
That's a great story. Well, so now recently you've opened up your own business, a business called Integritech. Mm-hmm. So what was your motivation for starting this new business?
It was really, like I say, throughout my career, the Lord being at work. Before I even really knew him that well, I'd say after I met my wife, we really got involved with the church. We got married, and we were called to our church home at Elmdale Baptist in Springdale. And coupled with all of the skills and knowledge and training and things I'd had through my career at Tyson and all the awesome exposure and just fantastic opportunities, I was walking, through Elmdale and really started to feel this, the Lord just calling me like, hey, this church could use your services, right? You don't have to be an evangelical to go share the gospel to serve Jesus. You can do that with how he's blessed me with these skills. Take those skills that he's given you and go apply them for him, right? So what I really started doing then was talking to my wife kind of about, things that I could do that would maybe make some change around there for the better from a technology perspective. It's a little bit older church, and it was kind of a spread out campus, and I took a look at it. I took an aerial picture off of Google Maps and started kind of just laying out, how would I lay down an infrastructure across this facility? I don't know how many acres they have, but they've got like 9 buildings, and they're kind of spread out. So
when you started this project, there wasn't really much of an organization or a system?
No, it was pretty disparate. You had services that are ran to different buildings that are charged and billed separately because the carrier, which would be Cox, they would run a service to a building, and it would be a Cox carried service to that building for internet. So they had a couple different bills for that, and just things were kind of disparate because people had their own systems, and it was never completely meshed or connected. I looked at it, and I put a project plan together, put a bill of materials and just kind of some things, and it was all volunteer time. And my wife and I donated a little bit of equipment to it as we went along. And our property and space committee had a meeting. We discussed it, and they gave it a go. And that's been probably going on 4 years ago now that we did all that. And we went through, and I took a bunch of volunteers, and we worked together as a team, and we ran all the infrastructure cabling and everything that had to be done to interconnect all the houses. The Lord blessed us with some underground fiber work that would have been crazy expensive that was done very, very reasonably. And we were able to interconnect and link everything fiber optically across the campus to a single location, and then consolidate all the services, reduce the monthly run rate for the phone bill and the internet bill and all that, and have a standard wired and wireless network across the entire campus, across all the buildings, and really, kind of provide a better level of technology services to the congregation. And I've learned some media and AV stuff because I've been involved with that stuff too at the church. Mostly it's just the technology side of the stuff that I've handled. I took over the support of all the machines for the staff and all the server and financial server services and all the stuff that runs there from a technology perspective. I just built and designed it like I would if it was a Tyson remote office. And really that was the epiphany and my partner does very much the same for his church, right? So we both kind of came to this vision of, man, we take all the skill and all the things we've done, and we can take all the practices and procedures and all the tricks that we've learned, and leveraging the relationships as well. And we can go apply that at a scale that fits into a smaller business, and I think provide a level of service for them that is probably something they're not quite used to getting. That was when, and he and I had talked for, like I say, the journey at church for me began 4 years ago or so. He'd been doing his quite a bit longer than that. We started talking about this business idea back then. And part of all that too was like the phone services. So, like Integritech today, kind of the portfolio of what we take care of, really the whole, if you'll take that portfolio as a whole, that's really what we provide for our churches, disaster recovery, data protection, network services, security services, phone services, server and infrastructure services, workstations. It's about anything. And nowadays it's cloud. In the whole, hey, I'm always trying to learn something new, just like my old man. I went and got certified for cloud technology because, hey, it's here. It does have an application. It is by no means a silver bullet that's going to solve all the world's problems when it comes to technology. But there's definitely a lot of things that even small businesses can leverage with the cloud to make things better, for them. And the way I look at it for anything when it comes to a change, whether it's a technological change or any change, it either, you have to be better for it in one way or another. It's either a financial benefit or it's a labor benefit. There's got to be something, there's got to be a reason, because it's going to take an investment to get there. It's not free, Right. Like when I come into a customer and I talk to him about services, it's, there's a fee. I have to run a business, but at the end of it, it should be a mutually beneficial partnership. And that's what we look to do is, we're going to come in and help you. And it may be streamlining processes, and it's kind of what we say is this whole people, process, technology kind of formula that you've got to build out. And technology, it moves fast, and there's a lot of complexity that can be there. But if we're doing our job right, we're simplifying that in a manner that when we turn it over to a person, they understand it and can leverage it to the best that they can for their own businesses or for their own needs. And our church staff at Elmdale, that was one thing too, because it's a technological change to go and change the things I did and getting them trained and kind of working on things. I mean, I would take a lunch and go over there and say, all right, here's your new phone system. This is what we built. And this is how it works. And we ran it parallel side by side for 6 months so they would feel comfortable with it before we cut it over. I think one of the biggest things that bothers me with, computer techs or whatever people I see, it's a lot of different fields, but I see it in the computer field too, and probably more prevalent because I'm in it, but is the guy that comes in and fixes a problem then acts like he's your hero. I mean, it's like, you did your job, buddy. Thanks. Be humble in all that you do and always remain humble. I think it's an opportunity to go serve somebody, because they could pick up the phone and call anybody else, but they chose to call you. So you should be grateful for that and do your very best. And so that's been a good attitude I've tried to carry my entire life, is in all things, the humility aspect of it. There was a opportunity in my career at Tyson that I had interviewed for a job, and it was one that had several rounds of interviews with some executives and things, and it was the only promotion I went for that I didn't get in my career. But the feedback from the panel was overwhelmingly that they were impressed with the humility that I had and how I approached kind of my position, because I have been very, very blessed to be a part of some very, very good teams, well-trained teams, highly skilled technical professionals that have pulled off some really neat stuff. I mean, like when Tyson bought Hillshire, my partner, myself, and a team of people, we all pulled together. We're the ones that really kind of pulled all that technology here to Northwest Arkansas, and we never even set foot on a plane to do it. We coordinated efforts. We put a lot of project planning in place. We leveraged a bunch of technology and sucked the data over the wire out of a facility across the country to here and landed it here with the least amount of disruption possible for, a corporation of that size, and did it, in a successful timeline and pulled it off. And it was good. That, and then, I was a part of the data center build out. We built, big career building opportunities are fantastic. And I had, key pieces and parts of it, but it wasn't me that, it was a team of people. I was always a part of a team, and I contributed my part, sure, but there was other people that did their part too. Mm-hmm. So you just got to always watch out. My old man, another thing, thinking back to childhood and how you're raised, right? It's like, no matter how good you think you are, there's somebody out there better. So, and I recognize that. I mean, you think of the talent coming out of colleges and high schools and just kids, just the generation. It's not even really the colleges and the high schools. It's just a straight generation thing, and how people are raised right now and the technology they're immersed in from birth. You got people that will enter a workforce, and if they are a geek to the core and they hobby on it all the time and they eat, sleep, and breathe technology, they can step in the door and in certain disciplines blow away a veteran that's been in the field for a while, because they have that passion, right? And they've got that fire and drive. And we've seen some pretty impressive recruits come through, in my career, where they come in and like, man, those guys, they've got some skills. Now, there's a lot of life to learn. There's a lot of experience to gain, but from a sheer banging on keyboards and making magic happen, they got it. They've got some really good things, but it also goes back to, in learning, the whole experience and age will teach you you're only as good as yourself standalone. A team is much better. And when I, thinking back to a practical example of this would be when I left the operations area and I moved upstairs, the guy backfilled me, and he was very, very intelligent, super smart guy. Smarter than I was at the time, for sure. I mean, he'd worked for mp3.com and, some other stuff that's back in the day. But, point being, very, very smart individual. Problem was in the kind of the teamwork aspect for him, I guess. So he came in a leadership role, and I think kind of tipped the culture from what I had it at down there, where, I make it a point to say I work with people, and I put myself in their shoes, and I try to make sure I don't ask them of somebody something that I wouldn't do myself or could do myself. He kind of just took a little bit different approach to that, maybe, where it was maybe a little bit not as much that way, I guess you could say. And it kind of just, like I say, turned that culture around down there, and it ended up where he ended up departing from the company after a while. And it's those kinds of things, you just got to be careful. You can't be the hot shot. You got to understand you'll get humbled at some point.
Right.
Growing up, my brother was a little bit of a scrapper, and my old man telling him the same thing. There's somebody out there tougher than you are, and he was tough. And he never was a, fighter for no reason. He just wouldn't take nothing from nobody, which benefited me a few times, because, like I say, I was shy and probably got picked on a time or two that I was glad he was around.
Okay. So starting out here at Integritech, who's your target customer? Who are you working with, and who would be a good match for your services here?
We've got a fantastic, what I believe is a fantastic portfolio of technical skills and people. But I think if we're looking at who we want to have conversations with. We've got a heart to serve nonprofits. I've got a heart for this area. I mean, I've grown up here my whole life, and I've seen this area, explode in population size, and I really want to serve this area and serve the community. And nonprofits definitely hold, from our churches too, right, hold a place in our hearts. So we'd love to get connected to some nonprofits in the area and see about, what kind of technology needs they may have. And we've, through the churches, done some work with software donation type things and stuff like that to understand, how that 501c3 process works, and how you can do things more cost efficiently and effectively for institutions like that. Commercial real estate's another one that really is something I would love to talk to some developers, because in 2018. Infrastructure and network services are like light switch, your light switch and plumbing and water. I mean, you've got to have your network and your internet and all that. So smart homes are the thing. Everybody's got a smart home. Or that they want to have a smart home. You've got remote control locks and all. So it's kind of like I kind of look at it like, what does that picture look like if you translate that more into a pre-wired or a pre-done lease space kind of a thing? So it
sounds like you can see the things that are available that we're not even thinking about now.
It may be being thought about, but really the how do you formulate it, how you develop it, and that was really like the coolest part about the later part of my career at Tyson was I became that architect, like designing solutions, right? Mm-hmm. And that was, through many years of developing a career, but getting to a point where you understand breadth and depth to a point to build those things into a solution. And that's what I'd really like to do is, from a commercial standpoint, is go figure out in office lease spaces. I mean, we're sitting in one right now that, first thing we do when we come in here, I think anybody does, is they go spend a significant amount of money doing build out for, your computer stuff. I mean, you got to have office workers, and those workers require a certain amount of technology to run. And at the bare minimum, there's still a minimum amount of tech. It's going to have tech though. It's all, even if you got a phone system or a network or internet, I mean, you can run a lot of services on that and not have to go further, but there's a baseline foundation that's got to be there. And I think that foundational technology is something that developers probably can benefit from. There's a model there, I believe, that's mutually beneficial from a service provider perspective like us to a commercial developer for managing those types of systems.
Yeah. So you really add an expertise from a larger company with a lot of bells and whistles to smaller companies or nonprofits that wouldn't have someone with your kind of skill set in their organization.
I had a chamber event this morning, and it's cool getting out and meeting people and talking to them and kind of telling our story. And if you're a small business and you have an IT guy, cool, we want to be that guy's friend. Most likely that person hasn't had the opportunities that we've had. And that's really all it boils down to. With the right person, the right opportunity, anybody's capable of achieving anything. So I think, the blessings I've had in my career throughout my life, I'd like to go and help others with. And we want to complement. We don't want to come in and uproot, we don't want to disrupt. We want to come in and complement things.
Yeah. Well, and I know you're just getting started. Do you have a favorite story yet of a customer that you've been able to help?
Yeah. So, there's been a couple of really good opportunities where, it's like you say, hey, somebody's got some internal IT staff and they've got just a really tough problem, and maybe it's impacting, and in this case it was impacting business, and it impacted business for a lengthy time for technology standards. My phone rang. It's like, hey, we've got an emergency, and, we need to see if you can come help. And, this is a big transition for me in my life where I've been so comfortable in a career and I've done well at, and I've uprooted all that to come and build this. And I think this is an example of how God's just kind of telling me, hey, I'm here. Because on the phone with this guy, I'm like, okay, I can come take a look at it. In the back of my head, I'm like, if they hadn't fixed it in this amount of time, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I mean, this is, it sounds like it's a significant problem. Set up a time, went out there and met him, and I walked on site and hadn't seen anything about their environment at all. Day one, walked in and took about 30 minutes of having them replay the last several actions, what they've done, how long it's been down, what the issues they've had in the environment, stuff like that. And within 30, 45 minutes, put my finger on the problem, fixed the issue, and had services restored. So,
And how long had they been wrestling with that?
Probably 4 business days.
Wow.
Quite lengthy time, from whether you're running with, call it critical level with no services or with hindered services, that's still a lengthy time to have any type of an issue in a technology environment. So, that was kind of one where the Lord's like, hey, you can go do this. And then I had another one happen, kind of similar. And just the coolest part about now where I'm at is, okay, I've got this history and it's, that's what's made me, from a technology perspective, and all those things is really cool. Stepping out where I'm at, that was kind of a hard thing. I'm no longer going to have the opportunities to go step in front of, executives of large 3-letter companies and contribute, at technology levels there anymore because I'm going and building my own business. But I take with me all those things, right? When I made that break and came this way, the pluses I see, though, that are really awesome is I get to go out and meet businesses I had no idea were even in my backyard and understand the problems they have and really sit with them and find out what is it that you need that maybe I can help provide a service or need for. It's like one customer, hey, I've got a need to work from home. And anymore today, that's like a given, but at a small business, sometimes they don't have the expertise in-house to configure it, right, or they don't have the technology in place or whatever. And it's like, sure. So 2 days later, he'd been wanting that service for a year. And 2 days later, I had him set up where he could work from home. And he's, and the neat thing is, okay, now I'm here. Tell me about your business and what you do, right? So he tells me about what they do. I'm like, man, that's a neat, the business that they run and what they do is it's in the medical field. And it's like, in my head from a data compliance perspective where I came from, my role at Tyson for much of my career was managing their data and disaster recovery and data protection and managing a lot of those pieces and parts and dealing from a technological perspective, to the end of my career, managing people that did that as a team. But yeah, he said he's, in the health field, so HIPAA and other compliance things come up, and I'm like, okay, how do you tackle all that? And so then we started talking about those things, which is still now conversations we're still having today on, is there anything we can do that could complement that? Because, we do come with that background where, we've had to be SOX compliant, we've had to be HIPAA and PCI, and PCI is not really a Tyson thing. I'm familiar with it, but we don't process credit cards, right? But PII, and those kinds of things. So any compliance and regulatory stuff, right as I was ejecting from Tyson, GDPR came on. So GDPR, you know what GDPR is?
I don't.
So GDPR is the Global Data Privacy Rights that the European Union passed.
Okay.
So if you are a corporation and you have a customer in the European Union, they can essentially call the ball at any time and say, you need to erase me from your data records now. Right? It's a big privacy thing because, data is everywhere. And Congress, I believe, in the States is starting to spin up conversations about how the state sides, how the U.S. is going to probably come up with some kind of regulatory compliance the same way. You look at the data breaches that are out there and all that stuff. It can get scary. You don't just want to go throw some equipment in a closet and say, hey, I'm going to hang my customer data off of my business off of this. When we designed this office and did what we did, but this is our bag. This is our thing. We do technology, so we can come in and build it secure. It's just definitely data is king. Data is everything. You think about AI and machine learning and all, you think about Google and all the, and Apple and all the big major IT or major technology companies. They'll offer you free services, free in quotes, because a lot of that, when you sign that terms of service, says I get to keep your data and then what they can do with that data, right? Yeah. They take it and they can track you, and it gets kind of scary, but, it's convenience. It's a trade-off. Google Location Services is on my phone, and I can drive around and do my Google Maps and stuff, but they have that information because they're processing it for me, right? And cloud's kind of the same thing. People worry about the cloud and worry about data sovereignty and stuff like that, right? So,
well, you're so excited about all the things that are possible, and you're clearly looking to the future. But at the same time, we need to protect ourselves, and we need to kind of understand what other folks who maybe don't have good intentions, might be doing. But you're somebody who can help your customers be in the right place and have all the bells and whistles that they need, and at the same time be protected.
And I've told people this, and it's something that I'm very much, I'm hopefully always going to be this way. And it's back to the humility part of it all. It's like, I'm never going to know it all. Nobody's going to know it all. You can't. Yeah. But you can be resourceful and you can be honest with people. And, between the immediate connections I have today and throughout my career and through just the expertise that Alan and I share, we've got a pretty good, just off the cuff, man, we can go work and do. But really, I've been hit with stuff. I mean, even in the short time I've been out doing this, I've been hit with stuff. So, I got to go figure that out. Right. Yeah. I haven't done that before, but I can sit down and I can crack that nut and I can peel it back and I can figure it out typically really quickly because I've just been in technology for so long, and when you boil it all down, there's going to be similar function across a lot of it. And it's really, it's layers. You just kind of peel back through it and go figure it out. I was always a kid that took stuff apart too. And it's, just you learn stuff that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if there's a listener out there right now who has been looking for someone like you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So our website is Integritech.io. So that's Integrity and Technology is where that name is from. And then our phone number, 479-202-6000. Info.
And you're located here in Bentonville?
Yeah, we're here in Bentonville on I Street. We've got a small office here, and I run out quite a bit doing meetings and things. So I usually hang a sign on the door when I'm gone for a little bit. New startup, not a whole lot of staff. It's myself full-time right now. We have contingent labor that we lean on for any type of capacity requirements we have for any type of workload. But it's one of those things that people, and I've got that question a lot being out getting started, that hey, you're just you. Well, okay, you got to start somewhere, and it's just me right now. That's true. But the team of experts that we ran, we worked on at Tyson, right? So take that example of the career that I just came from. We had 6 people that ran all the infrastructure that supported one of the largest core operating systems for the company and supported thousands of users across the globe. And it was 6 people. The environment we come from and kind of how we operate and the technologies we leverage allow us to be very efficient and effective at what we do. So granted, physically, I can only be in one place at a time. And when I leave this building, I got to hang a sign on the door. Mm-hmm. But if I get down the road and I get an emergency call, I'm a few minutes from booting a laptop up and tethering my phone to solving a problem.
Yeah.
Because, you can remote to anything, when it comes down to it, and with technology, I can be many places at once. I mean, I can sit at my workstation and solve 5 different customer problems at the same time. So, we call it, oversubscription. It's kind of in the technical term of when you're talking about services from a technology perspective, you can oversubscribe bandwidth and different things like that, CPU and memory and those kinds of things. So it's kind of the same thing. We're oversubscribing technicians to a customer base, but it allows us to do services more cost effectively, especially at the level we can execute, and it allows us to build out and start small and grow and scale, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're to do.
Well, we will have all your contact information in our show notes, okay. So it'll be easy for folks to find.
Perfect.
Now, you had mentioned, how you got started in your church ministry. Mm-hmm. Any plans going forward over at the church?
Yeah, so actually kind of big plans for us, actually. I think we're a little behind on a project to reno our main sanctuary, which should allow us to do a lot of media and AV updates. We're behind on that side of it. And honestly, all the technology that I did roll out was all a bunch of old eBay scratch and dent stuff, but it was enterprise grade equipment that, companies had used and ditched, and we bought it for the cheap and went and configured it. So there's, I think this year we've got a decent budget to get some updates for hopefully live streaming and doing a little bit better way of doing our recordings and some video stuff, video editing, things like that. Because right now we're still pretty basic with it. We've got just I think a couple of Macs, and we kind of do a lot of things on that platform, which is fine. I mean, it's what does really well for that. But we do want to get more into the to the live streaming thing. And then the translation's been really kind of a thing for me, man. For probably 2 years, I've been on this journey of figuring out language translation for our church. And it's, the way it's been solved for so long with the, the FCC regulated bands like 70 to 80, I think, or something like that under FM, right? You can't tune to it on your car.
Okay, right.
So those are like your old school, I think Williams Sound is the company, but they got an in-ear piece and you can just listen in its own privately broadcast FM. Well, my first DIY of that system was a Raspberry Pi that I built with a FM radio transmitter on it, and you can broadcast up to 250 feet without a license. So we did our own radio on a real radio dial. We just picked an unused band in Springdale and broadcast that. And that lasted for about a year. And it was something that we migrated off that platform now into a different platform that I've got designed. But it just gets to be it's very expensive to just go buy something. And I'm trying to, figure out a way to do it more cost effectively for the church and then potentially build it into some kind of a platform. Because, we're in a melting pot of Northwest Arkansas, and where we're planted at in Springdale is a highly populated Hispanic community. And we want to reach them and make them feel at home and sit right next to our brothers and sisters in Christ. And we, to do that, I think there's some technology things that I could potentially, be a part of to maybe help that. And I think that, it'd be great. I would love to be a part of it, and I'd be blessed to do it. So we're still kind of fine tuning some of that. Part of it is, a training aspect of, hey, this is a brand new technology and you got these translators, you're trying to teach them how the system works and how you design it. And that's the whole thing between a user and a computer guy is, this is how I built it. How do you want to use it? And it's back and forth, right? But taking feedback and making modifications and building it where it's going to work, but also building it where it's usable. Because if it works and ain't usable, it's useless. So, But yeah, so that's those things this year. I'm hoping to kind of get a translation system nailed down and get some better AV in the sanctuary and do the reno in there and things like that. So
sounds exciting. It's going to keep you busy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, Jason, are you ready to go to our lightning round?
Sure.
Just have a few random questions for you.
Sure.
All right. The first one: do you consider yourself more a hunter or a gatherer?
If you asked me that question a few years ago, it's definitely a gatherer. But these days, as a business owner, it's a hunter. I mean, I got to get out and make it happen. So, And that's been good. They had told me it's a hustle, and it is a little bit of a hustle. I'm getting out there and doing it, but it's fun. I enjoy meeting people and talking to them.
Yeah. Well, and you like a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Second question: what would we find you doing on your day off, away from work?
Well, it's family time. I try to disconnect and spend time with the family and Sundays is church. We were involved there with our Sunday school class and we do things there, activities. And then, when I get, if it's hobby time for me, it's definitely tinkering. I mean, I love to tinker. I've got a 3D printer at home that I've tore down and I'm trying to rebuild, some things on. And, like I say, the whole Pi FM project for church Raspberry Pis, IoT sensors. I built a little, GPS tracking device with a little LTE board thing and just kind of technology
you really love what you do.
Oh, yeah, I love it. It's awesome.
That's great.
It's definitely always evolving and changing, and there's never the same. It's never the same all the time, right? You're always going to have something new.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Last question. What's the funniest thing that's happened to you recently?
Let's see. I don't know. I mean, my boy and I do the whole. He's 5, right? So he is all boy. So we probably. I guess we were playing around the house, and we had a Nerf gun war, and he thought it was funny anyway. He shot me in the face with a dart, and it stuck in my beard. So he thought that was hilarious.
I love it. All right. Well, and when we see your picture on the podcast, they'll know a visual of what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time today and being with us.
Thank you, Tom.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to The Wonderful Life. And remember, the only thing that you can take with you is that which you give away. This is Tom Rohr, the richest man in town, signing off till next time.
This is the Padua Podcast Network. PaduaMedia.com.